What are your predictions for the next evolution of D&D? Will we get a 6th edition in 2024? My next Kickstarter, Layers and Legends, is launching April 5th and will bring you 2 hardcover books packed with 5th edition resources. The first book, Layers and Legends, will contain an anthology of over 20 5e adventures spanning levels 1 to 15 and more than 100 new monsters to terrorize your players with. The second book, Loot and Lore, will contain a broad collection of Game Master resources, magic items, traps, puzzles, NPCs, villains, and more that you can drag and drop into your game. And we'll have a map pack that will give you all the maps from both books in digital format, allowing you to easily import them into the virtual tabletop of your choice. So click that link below and follow the Layers and Legends Kickstarter so that you'll get notified when it launches. Don't miss out on the early bird specials. Let's talk about what we actually know. And here's the thing, they did this like little teaser announcement, this little tiny clip where they talked very vaguely about this next evolution of D&D, and they didn't give us a whole lot of information. Maybe they were just playing it up a little bit. Maybe they were counting on people wildly speculating, creating hype and buzz so that we would get all like, woo, what's gonna happen in 2 years? What are we gonna get? And get all excited about it. I don't know, but they did a very good job of it because everybody seems to be like, whoa, what's gonna happen? So let's talk about what we actually know from their little announcement that they did. We know that the next evolution is coming in 2024. Check. WOTC, which is the Coast, is going to release a new set of core rulebooks. That means the Player's Handbook, the Monster Manual, and the Dungeon Master Guide. At least that would be my assumption of what a core set of rulebooks would be for D&D. And next we know that digital tools are in the works. Now, this of course begs the question, what they mean by digital tools? And that has led some people to speculate that perhaps, just perhaps, they're going to be replacing D&D Beyond with their own digital tool. And that has led folks on a little bit of speculation on the rabbit hole. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit, because that would probably make some people upset if they actually do that. Are we going to get a 6th edition? Historically, when have we gotten new editions? If you look at the originals, 2nd edition, 3.5, 4th edition, when do we normally get new editions? When the current edition is getting stale and sales are going down. That's usually when you see us getting another edition. Now, there's also been like a cadence, it seems like, for getting new editions as well. And 4th edition was kind of an outlier. They ushered in a new edition pretty quickly after 4th edition because, well, you know, obvious reasons and stuff like that. So in 5th edition, is it getting stale? Are sales going down? No. 5th edition is wildly popular. It's more popular than it ever was. The popularity continues to increase. Sales continue to go up. I was looking at statistics on sales data. 2020, sales were up 33%. It was one of their best years ever, Wizards of the Coast. D&D sales, not like Magic the Gathering and D&D, just D&D sales were up 33%. 2017, 2019 were some other data that I could see. Sales were really good too. So sales are up, new players are coming on. 5th edition is super popular. It's being used by Critical Role and other popular D&D shows. So we're not getting tired of 5th edition. People aren't starting to abandon it. We're not getting bored of it. Sales are not going down. So it wouldn't make sense, because you're doing very well with something, to introduce a new edition. I don't think it would make any sense at all. So that's one thing that would preclude you from making a new edition, because you're making lots of money. Why would you make a new edition? Let's wait until the popularity goes down, and then it makes more sense to put a new edition in there when people are starting to get bored, when they're looking for something new. The other thing I want to say is that if you were to release a 6th edition when you had tons of people who were loving 5th edition, then what you're going to have is you're going to have a split. You're going to be trying to push 6th edition. Some people are going to hop over, but a lot of people are going to be like, no, 5th edition is amazing. We love this. We're going to keep on playing this. And then you're going to have a problem marketing and selling your 6th edition. And that would be a problem for them as well. So I don't know that you're going to see people jumping ship if they put out a 6th edition, jumping ship from 5e to 6e. Not right now. The climate isn't right for it. Now, in the case of something like 4th edition, if you had 4th edition, right, where it wasn't well received, generally speaking, and people kept on playing 3.5, in fact, the failure of 4th edition led to the rise of Paizo and their amazingly successful Pathfinder game. So when you have something like that that kind of doesn't do so well, that's when you introduce a new edition. That's when you want to say, okay, look, this isn't working, let's give people a new edition. And we don't see that happening for 5th edition. So I don't think that we're going to see a 6th edition. That would be basically Wizards, in my opinion, would be shooting themselves in the foot to give us a 6th edition. So, and the other thing they announced as well with the next evolution is that the next evolution is going to be backwards compatible with 5.5, with 5th edition, which leads us to believe, of course, that it's not going to be a 6th edition, because a 6th edition wouldn't be backwards compatible with a 5th edition, would it? But a 5.5 would most likely be backwards compatible with a 5th edition. So evidence would lead us to believe that we're not going to see a 6th edition. We're going to see a 5.5. So the next logical question then, of course, is, well, what is going to be in the 5.5? The first thing that I think you're going to see, based upon the current trend and what they're doing, is you're going to see a more sanitized game. There can be no doubt about this. They're already going back and reworking entire modules such as Curse of Strahd to remove content that might be offensive that was written, and now they're like, you know, we should have done that because reasons, right? And so they're already going back and reworking things. And so I think you can expect them to give that same sort of treatment to the core rulebooks. If there's anything in the Player Handbook, Dungeon Master Guide, Monster Manual that might be offensive, or they think that they should rework in order to sanitize things more, I think you're definitely going to see that. So you'll see that going through the core rulebooks. And we're talking about the Player Handbook, the Monster Manual, and the Dungeon Master Guide. Definitely, I think you're going to see more of that because that's their current trend. That's what they're doing in a lot of their products. The second thing that you're going to see, and this is, now we're kind of talking about a couple things that are going to probably change in the Player's Handbook, is that the ability score increases that are based on races will be gone. That'll be a thing of the past. You're almost assuredly in 5.5 going to have what we have in Tasha's now, where when you get an ability score increase, as a dwarf, you get 2 ability score increases. You know, and you can, supposedly, if you're a mountain dwarf, you get +2 strength and +2 con. In 5.5, I assure you that it won't be like that. You will be able to put those 2 points and 2 points anywhere you want. They can go to dexterity, they can go to charisma if you want. I think you're definitely going to see that. You're no longer going to have races that have their bonuses set where they're going to go. That will definitely be a thing. And their stated reason for doing this is to give players more options, more flexibility, so that you can play the character that you want to play. And as a player, I like that. I love that idea. Because when I create characters, when I'm playing in a game, I am a filthy min-maxer. I am. And so if I'm creating a fighter, you better well believe that I'm looking at the races that have bonuses to their strength and to their constitution. For instance, a mountain dwarf is a wonderful fighter because they get a +2 strength and a +2 constitution. I love that. I'm almost always going to play a barbarian or a fighter who's a mountain dwarf. Why wouldn't I? And so as a player, it actually is a cool thing that I can play a halfling or an elf or whatever and put those bonuses wherever I want to put them. And so I can play the character that I really want to play, say, for flavor purposes or whatever it happens to be. And I don't have to worry too much about where those bonuses are going to be. So I don't mind that as a player. Now, that begs the question, of course, is that Wizards' real reason for making those changes? I'm not sure that it is. I don't think it is. I think purposes are probably more toward sanitizing the game than actually allowing for more freedom. Those are my personal thoughts on it. And I think the reason is that you can get yourself in trouble easily when you have a race that gets bonuses in certain areas, and then people correlate that race to real world races. You get yourself into hot water fast. For instance, let's just pick on the orcs. Orcs traditionally get a plus to their strength, and They don't get a negative to their intelligence, but they're usually portrayed as not very intelligent races, the orcs. You know, they're very strong, but not very intelligent. And if you were to take the orc and let's pretend that there's a segment of people that correlate and say that the orc actually represents a real world people group, then you can see how there could be some hot water they'd be landing themselves in, because people are drawing out implications, things that they think are implied. Then they're taking things in the fantasy game and they're applying it to real life. And then you can land in places where people are upset with you. And so I think that they are going to, one of the reasons they're going to get rid of the whole different races get, you know, different ability score increases is to basically cover their butts. I think it's a cover your butt move in a lot of ways, so that they don't, you know, have certain folks getting upset about that. And so I think that's a large part of the reason. Now, the stated reason is to give players more flexibility, and I support that. I think that's wonderful. I love the flexibility of it. So I think that that's a good change, that you're definitely going to see that in 5th edition, 5.5, let us say. I think the other thing you're going to see as well is you're definitely going to get a reworking of the core classes. Wizard, Rogue, Ranger, Barbarian, Fighter, all of the core classes that you see in the player handbook are going to get reworked. Now, my hope is that they rework the core classes so that they get a boost in power to be on par with the new options that are in Tasha's and the other splat books that are coming out that are making the character options more and more powerful. So my hope is that the core classes will get that boost as well, to put everything on an even playing field. That would be my hope. The second thing I think you're going to see is you're going to see subclasses that could be used with multiple classes. So for instance, we saw this in the Unearthed Arcana, Mages of Strixhaven. They basically had subclasses. I don't remember the exact names, but there was a subclass, for instance, that could be used with a bard, a wizard, or a sorcerer. And the subclass wasn't specifically only for wizards or only for bards. I think you're definitely going to see that. And that's going to give you more flexibility, more player options, different things you can choose, which I think sounds pretty cool. I like that idea. The trick is going to be balancing it properly, because the thing is, the more options and the more choices and the more builds you can possibly make, that's when balancing the game gets even more complex. And that's why as more and more splat books gets released, the game becomes more and more unbalanced. It's just the way things go. So you're definitely going to get fluid ability score increases and fluid subclasses, and you're going to get more character options. Definitely you're going to see that in 5.5. Okay. Changes to the Dungeon Master Guide. You're almost assuredly going to see things from Xanathar's and Tasha's getting pulled in to the Dungeon Master Guide. They're all, you know, they just want to, like, the sidekick rules, some of the rule clarifications in Xanathar's, maybe the rules on tool proficiencies. That stuff is probably going to get pulled into the Dungeon Master Guide. We're seeing this with the Morning Canon's Masters of the Multiverse that's coming out, how they're taking existing products and putting it into the new book. And I think you're probably going to see more of the same with the Dungeon Master Guide. It makes sense to me to put all of those essentially Dungeon Master rules into one resource. So I think we're definitely going to see that. The Monster Manual. You're going to get an update to all of the monsters in a couple different ways. They're going to get rid of alignment. Alignment will come out of the stat blocks. That's the first thing. They're going to put proficiency bonuses in the stat blocks, make it a little bit easier for you to know what the proficiency bonus is. And you're going to get a reworking of how spells work, similar to the way they're doing it in the He-Man Master of the Universe book that they have coming out. Next, I hope and pray that they adjust the challenge rating. The challenge rating of the monsters in the Monster Manual for two reasons. One, I don't know if you've noticed this, but the monsters in Volos and Morning Canons, pound for pound challenge rating compared to the challenge rating for older monsters in the Monster Manual, the newer monsters are more powerful, no doubt about it. So I'm hoping that the ones in the Monster Manual are going to get a new look at their challenge rating to bring everything kind of on par. And this is going to help us. This is going to help us with dealing with the new, more powerful character options that we have and the reworking of the classes, which is probably going to make them more powerful as well. So I really hope they're going to do that. I would love to see new monsters, but you're not going to see that. So just erase that out of your mind and out of your thoughts. You're not going to see new monsters with their new next evolution, at least not the core rulebook. You won't see that. So that's basically that is the rework that I envision for the player handbook, the Dungeon Master Guide, and the Monster Manual. You're not going to see any new content. New content is not something on the horizon for that. You might see a little tiny bit of it in the player handbook with the new subclass options and stuff, but there's not going to be a whole lot of new content. It's just a reworking of the rule set. That's just the way it's going to go with that. I almost guarantee you. Okay, so the biggest question, I think, and this is the question that perhaps some people are getting a little worked up about or anxious about or wondering, is are they, when they said that there are going to be new digital tools, does Wizards intend to replace D&D Beyond? Or do they intend to, for instance, create their own online system and either shut down D&D Beyond, pull the licensing, or just splinter it and do their own thing with 5.5? You know, that's the question. What's going to happen with D&D Beyond when they say new digital tools? Well, historically, Wizards already tried once to make online tools with 4th edition. Supposedly there was going to be, I think, what were they going to do with 4th edition? It was actually going to be a virtual tabletop or some sort of thing for 4th edition, so you could literally play online. And that rather failed, but my guess is that probably failed because 4th edition kind of failed and there was a lot less interest in it and fewer people subbing to it and supporting it, and so they torpedoed the whole project. That would be my guess. So they already tried to do that and they didn't do it. They didn't do it successfully. It failed. And so they were like, okay, let's not do it ourselves this time for 5th edition. Let's contract the work out to a different company, the company that does D&D Beyond. And let's have them do it. And guess what? They did it pretty well. And you know, it's a fairly good product. So are they going to try to do their own? The problem with doing their own, if they want to, you know, tank D&D Beyond and have their own online tool where they're not subcontracting and then presumably they're making more profit, you'd imagine, is the outcry. There would be so many crazy people up in arms. Not crazy people, they would probably be justified. The thing is that people already complain enough that this is the standard argument against D&D Beyond. Luke, I already got to buy the physical books, and now I have to go out and buy them again a second time on D&D Beyond. It's not fair. I can understand the sentiment. You're not literally buying the books again. You're buying an online tool that makes it easier for you to run games online or helps with ease of reference and stuff, or with character building, or with just finding the monsters quickly, or facilitating online role-playing games on like Roll20 and stuff easier. So you're not actually buying the books a second time. But that's not the point. The point is that people are upset about the fact that they had to buy the D&D books, the physical books, and then they had to buy stuff on D&D Beyond. If they were upset about that, can you imagine how upset they would be if D&D Beyond got shut down? And Wizards is like, you know, I know you bought the books for 5th edition. I know you had all of the content on D&D Beyond. I know you spent hundreds of dollars on that. But you know what? We have a new online platform where you can play 5.5. Well, yeah, you have to buy the content there. You don't just get it for free. It's not free. You'd have to buy it, right? It costs money, web servers and web development and stuff. You have to buy it a second time. And then people are like, well, I bought the books. I bought D&D Beyond stuff. And now you shut that down. And now you're telling me I have to buy it all over a third time on your new digital tool that you're creating? I think people would not be happy about that. So my gut tells me that Wizard isn't dumb enough to do that. Now, I don't know, they've done dumb things before, so maybe they would, but I don't think they're gonna do that. I think they're smarter than that. So then the question is, of course, well then what are the new digital tools? I don't know. They might have been simply talking about an expansion to D&D Beyond. My hope for a long time has been that D&D Beyond gets its own virtual tabletop, integrated into it, so that I don't have to use Roll20 anymore, or you don't have to use whatever it is you use. You could just simply use D&D Beyond, and hopefully it would be a good tabletop. And we could just Everything is in D&D Beyond. It's all in one place, and I don't have to goof around with like extensions that take D&D Beyond stuff and put it in Roll20. I could just simply play in one place. Hopefully it'll be modernized, have a good user interface, and work well. Dynamic lighting that doesn't bog down your whole system. You know, things like that would be really cool. That would be a fairly good quality of life improvement, I think. Maybe it's tools to make the DM's job easier. Maybe something like a monster builder in D&D Beyond or somewhere else that would actually help you. It should be in D&D Beyond. They would help you make your own homebrew monsters pretty easily. Calculate CRs and all this kind of stuff. But it could have been any of this stuff. But I don't think they're shutting down D&D Beyond. I don't think they're getting rid of that.